Hello and welcome to this tips and techniques video from Master Your Photography. In this series we've carefully crafted a collection of short videos designed to provide you with key points on specific topics without any of the unnecessary waffle. Our goal is to give you practical information that you can immediately apply to your own photography. We understand that your time is precious, so we've condensed each video to deliver concise, actionable information. With our tips and techniques series, you'll gain the knowledge and the confidence to improve your photography in no time at all. So, that's probably enough waffle, let's get started. In this video, I want to cover some of the reasons why it might be a good idea for you to use manual mode. Now, the automatic settings on your camera are really good, and 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time, they're going to do a really good job. Let's just have a quick overview of the various automatic modes. They do vary from camera to camera, but in the main you'll find one that's labelled auto, you'll find one that's labelled P, which stands for program, not professional. You'll find one labelled A, which is sometimes also labelled AV, that's aperture priority, and then there's usually an S or TV setting, which is shutter priority. And then of course you've got M, which is the one we're concerned with in this video, and that's full manual control. All of these modes, that's automatic and manual, are based on the exposure triangle. That is, there are three variables that we can change: the shutter speed, the lens aperture and the ISO sensitivity, and the combination of these three settings give us our exposure. Now, in the automatic modes, the camera is making all the decisions, or some of the decisions, depending on which mode you're using, and in manual mode you're going to be making all the decisions yourself. Let's take a look at a typical scene where the automatic modes might just get it wrong. Something such as this, where we've got white snow on the ground, we've got some very light coloured stonework and a fairly bright sky. Now, the automatic modes are going to interpret this scene and try to make it an 18% grey. If you want to understand why it works on 18% grey, we have another video on the exposure triangle, which would be worth watching after you've seen this one. Now, if we switch to manual mode, we can actually make the exposure lighter by using longer shutter speed, or maybe a wider aperture, or turning up our ISO sensitivity. The main thing is we have full control, so we can actually photograph the scene and end up with an image that is representative of how it looked in real life, rather than something that looks a little bit dull, a little bit grey. You may also find that your camera runs into problems when it's faced with a particularly high contrast scene. So that is where you've got very bright areas and very dark areas within the same image. And sometimes your camera can struggle with this because it doesn't quite know where you want the exposure to sit, at the light end of the scale or the dark end, or somewhere in the middle. By switching to manual, you can actually make that decision yourself. So by switching to manual, it is giving us full control of the entire exposure triangle. By changing the shutter speed, we can decide whether we want to have a lighter or darker image, whether we want to blur or freeze any motion. We can change the aperture, again to adjust the exposure, but also to increase or decrease the depth of field in the image. And we can turn the ISO up if we are in a particularly dark situation and we need to maximize the light capture of our camera, or if we want to simply turn the ISO up so that we can use a smaller aperture or a faster shutter speed. You should always try to keep your ISO setting as low as you possibly can, and that way you'll maximize the quality of every image. So even a nighttime scene such as this, which is particularly tricky for the automatic modes because it's high contrast, you've got very bright lights and you've got some very deep shadows there. So switch to manual, get the ISO very low and use a longer shutter speed or a wider aperture to enable the camera to give you the exposure that you want. If you're a bit unsure about manual mode to start with, then it's a good idea to maybe start with some of the semi-automatic modes, the aperture priority or the shutter priority. Now, these modes allow you to set one particular parameter, i.e. in the shutter priority mode you're setting the shutter speed and the camera will determine the aperture for you. The ISO can be on automatic, or you can preset that as well. So you can almost tweak the automatic level that you want to start with. And then as you shoot more pictures and you look at the settings and look at the results, then you'll be able to progress to full manual mode. And at that point, you really are in charge. Nothing wrong with using automatic modes, but it's really useful for those 5%, 10% of times when the camera gets it wrong, if you can switch to manual and get the exact result that you want. Thank you for tuning in to Master Your Photography's Tips and Techniques series. We hope you found this video useful and practical. Remember, each photo you take is a stepping stone towards becoming a better photographer. So, get out there and capture the world in your own unique way. Until next time, happy shooting.